All right. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Hopefully we can have more people fill in. There are some seats in the front of the room as well for one of the last panels of the day. My name is George. Let's just start this panel by having each of our panelists introduce themselves. Turn it over to you, Ape.
Start with you. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. Good to see you all. I run Corp Dev M&A Ventures at Moonpay and also strategic partnerships.
Hey, I'm Andrew. I'm the founder of Conduit, and we do roll-ups as a service.
I'm Griffin. I'm the co-founder of Haliday, and we let you automate any workflow across blockchains.
Perfect. And so AI and stablecoins is the topic of this panel. We're going to jump into the first question, and we'll go, Andrew, to you. What trends are you seeing around fintech companies using stablecoin payments across chains or networks? Love to hear your thoughts.
I think stablecoins are kind of a big disruptor to fintech. I think it's the form factor that I think really resonates there. I think just the settlement times that you can get, particularly with a lot of international payments, is just kind of huge. I think we're starting to see both startups, but also incumbents start to come on chain with stablecoins, and whether that's with kind of their own blockchain or utilizing kind of existing distribution, I think it's really the hot topic kind of this year, I think.
Ape, Griffin, would like to chime in as well?
Yeah. No, I think, we've seen a lot of activity with stablecoins, especially as, there's a proliferation of blockchains. And one of the challenges has been settling transactions across many distributed ledgers. And we're seeing this emergence, which makes sense that we're going to use the dollar, which is the traditional global settlement currency for blockchains themselves. And what this utility has really driven is it's driven mass interoperability and made onboarding simpler. And so we just expect to see stable coins becoming more and more the way you move money between these sort of hubs of value that are on the different networks, as opposed to this sort of really complicated n-squared structure where everybody's swapping between different tokens. So there's this consolidation happening on the stablecoin layer that I think is interesting to observe.
Yeah, I mean, wow, so much going on in stablecoins. From a Moonpay perspective, obviously we're in the thick of things, and I think personally speaking, this has been my focus for the last 6 months and probably for the next 6 months as well. Just there's a lot going on which we can get into.
Perfect. Ape, we're going to stick with you. So for traditional Web2 platforms like e-commerce or ride-sharing apps, what are the practical steps and challenges to integrating AI-powered stablecoin experiences?
Yeah, so we think about this a lot, which is, what is the desired state and how many steps away are we from that, and kind of mapping that out. And I think that use case is actually makes a ton of sense, especially if, as you go to different countries. I think we are like 5 or 6 steps away, unfortunately, from that. That might be the last kind of bastion, no pun intended. But I think the main challenge is KYC and having uniformity in that KYC experience. Oftentimes, the folks use a patchwork of vendors, different geographies, different experiences, dropping in conversion. That's the kind of first drop of conversion. The second drop of conversion is whether you're using partners or you're using your own licenses. If you're using your own licenses, you have more of a leeway in terms of what to accept and what to not accept. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of your banking partners. So that's the second kind of issue. The third issue is risk. Who takes on the risk? Is it Uber and Lyft taking on the risk, or is it kind of someone like a Moonpay or Conduit, or Haliday will not take on the risk. And I think the fourth piece is use cases. I think there's a lot of education required, and we often run into this with when we come across accounts, really good name brand accounts, a lot of volume. But if 99% of their business is not in stablecoins, the quick answer that they have is this going to jeopardize my 99%, right? And that's the piece which I think takes a little bit of education. So those are the kind of four things I would think about. But I'm sure Andrew thinks about this every day.
We don't spend as much time on the consumer side. I think our maybe hot take is that I think blockchains are for B2B, and that the onboarding issue with consumers is just very difficult. When to onboard a new user, you're basically opening kind of a new bank account, and you have to figure out how to fund it and kind of go through kind of all these challenges. I think over time, in some ways it gets abstracted away, and so we see a lot of big fintech players wanting to move a majority of kind of their volume onto their own settlement layer, right? So instead of using existing banking rails, they can kind of internalize and verticalize that part of the stack, which I think has always been the biggest core challenge for a lot of these payment processors, or frankly, TradFi, fintech, et cetera. So I think maybe a different question I answered there, but I think consumer I kind of view as very challenging, and I think the future of blockchain is really kind of B2B.
Yeah, I can provide some color on this too, where, if you think about a lot of the AI businesses who are handling onboarding or customer experience, think of businesses like Decagon or Sierra that have raised at multi-billion-dollar valuations for LLM-based customer support. Those companies are not doing blockchain. So blockchain has been segmented separately from the rest of software. And there's this, I'd almost say that blockchain is a little bit behind the rest of the software industry in that we talk about crypto AI companies separately from AI businesses. And so one of the issues is that nobody's really put two and two together to apply many of the new LLM-based technologies to blockchain businesses. Like, name one blockchain that has a sophisticated ChatGPT-like user experience. It just doesn't exist. And I think so two of the problems are there's compliance. You can't send your private key to an AI system. That's custody, and that's not allowed. So no AI business wants to take private keys. The second thing is safety. This is not unstructured documentation information or facts about a product. This is money moving, and it needs to be exact. So nobody's built the sort of guardrail system for AIs to interact safely, right? MCP from Anthropic is very focused on OAuth and these traditional Web2 systems. So it's largely forgotten from the conversation. But blockchains are computers. They're data systems. AI operates on any sort of data system. So I think it's inevitable that we integrate these two. And the end result of that will be, I can talk to an application. I can say, how do I get started? And then you can instantly pay, right? USDC and stablecoins are programmable value. They're inherent to the computer itself, which is a very exciting opportunity to intelligent programmable money. That in of itself is an important invention. But we're still, the two industries are very disjoint, largely due to compliance and technology differences. But I think that will be solved in the coming years.
Gotcha. Griffin, sticking with you, and I think kind of pulling on the thread that you started to go down with compelling use cases, what comes to mind when these two areas are combined, especially when you're thinking about the improvements of payment infrastructure or even customer experience, which you mentioned with the unstructured data piece. Interested in your thoughts or what's top of mind for you?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two ways to look at it, and sort of piggybacking off of what Andrew was saying with there's B2B payments, right? So stablecoins are ripping through a lot of the B2B payments world, especially with international payments and cross-border payments. So one of my concerns for these blockchain payment businesses, I don't know if anybody's uses Ramp or these modern bill pay services, they're all integrating OCR LLM-based technologies into their Web2 payment stack. So we risk building this entirely new blockchain infrastructure and then remaking 2017 SaaS that has none of the intelligent features that we want. So I'd almost say it's AI is like storage. There are very few applications that don't have storage. You should be building AI into your apps regardless if you're a blockchain or a Web2 business. If you're doing invoice processing, how are you actually doing that and converting that to a stablecoin workflow? How are you connecting your Web2 ERP to stablecoin operations and on-chain money movement? I think that is almost a no-brainer that we have to do this. But again, very few companies are taking these LLM technologies and applying it to blockchains because there's a little bit of an artificial barrier. The second thing is this customer experience. If anybody here is onboarded to a crypto application, you probably struggled. It's probably complicated. Just asking, how do I get started? What does that mean in the context of a blockchain app? Why is there no Decagon or Sierra for blockchain? Why can't I ask how I get started and it just shows me how to swap and it shows me how to onboard? These are things that just need to get done that I think are latent needs. that, we just need to figure out the compliance and custody structure to make work in practice.
Would you guys like to add on, Abhay or Andrew? No? Okay, we're going through the questions quickly. I think I talked to Joanna too, and we may have time for some audience questions as well. But I guess a year from now, I think to your point earlier, you were talking about we're a few steps behind, there are a few steps ahead to get to the point where we see these two things converge. But a year from now, any hot takes or thoughts? We're on this stage again. It's 2026 of what will kind of transpire in the next 12 months.
For me?
Yeah, down the line. We'll start with you, Abhay.
Yeah. I actually agree. I think the tipping point of the spear is going to be B2B. And if you're sitting here in a year from now and a couple of things haven't happened, I would be very surprised. One is some kind of clarity on the Stable Act and the Genius Act, right? I think that's going to set off a bit of an arms race across the kind of industry in terms of getting the right licenses. Obviously, there are going to be certain companies that are well positioned for that, and the ones that are first out of the block, including Moonpay, I think will have a bit of an asymmetric upside to it. The second thing is, I think, look, there are a lot of companies in this space, a lot of venture money flowing in, right? It will, the application layer, the middleware layer, and the core rail layer, I think they'll get a little more clear. Right now, each one is picking a niche, extending as deep as they can in that niche, and then eventually building either vertically or horizontally. I think it'll be very clear in a year from now, are you a horizontal company or are you a vertical company, right? And if that strategy is not clear, you probably shouldn't be kind of building in that space, because I just think the space from a regulatory perspective and from a go-to-market perspective, we would have crossed the kind of tipping point of market standardization by next year.
I think one thing that we'll really see, and I think we're starting to see, so one of our biggest clients at Conduit is a protocol called Athena, and they recently partnered with Securitize and have about 10 billion in TVL between them, and they're partnering on something called Converged Chain, which kind of brings together both TradFi tokenization with kind of more crypto native DeFi. And I think importantly for both of those teams, I think what launching their own network really enabled is verticalizing the value stack. And so today they're both typically deployed across many different chains. And I think what they've recognized is that's a great bootstrapping mechanism. But once you have distribution, it just makes too much financial sense and frankly, just kind of sovereignty to own your own chain and to be able to take that to the next level. And so I think they're a leading example there. And I wouldn't be surprised if over the next year or two, we see a lot of other big protocols or fintech companies or TradFi giants kind of follow suit.
Yeah, I think one space that I think is quite interesting that is an outlier but will likely progress quite quickly is the development of more of the autonomous web. We're seeing a lot of exciting software innovation and protocolization at the data translation layer of autonomous systems. So like you have MCP, right, from Anthropic. That's a standard way to exchange information between an LLM and a sort of off-chain, web to cloud. Now you have Google with the A to A standard, which is a way for their sort of ecosystem to communicate with each other. Now the open question is, can the Web 2 players, can the TradFi system support programmable autonomous value transfer, or are programmable public ledgers a better place for that economic activity to happen? And I think we'll see them sort of compete, right? You have a lot of the Web 2 companies are now offering agent SDKs. But as we know, right, a lot of these old systems are built on COBOL and mainframes. Getting API access to a bank in your LLM is highly, highly unlikely, right? But plugging in these autonomous systems into blockchains is very, very new. Is it a mature use case right now? Absolutely not. But I think all the large AI businesses are starting to think about this, right? Where a lot of YC companies are now building what are called B2A companies, business to agent businesses. And they use like metronome-based billing, usage-based billing. And so as we see this evolve, it's interesting to consider that maybe in a year we'll start seeing autonomous systems settle on blockchains using stablecoins to exchange value or to certify that a contract has been done instead of using like DocuSign and a PDF that's super slow and expensive. And if there's anything that sort of serves as a large disruption that comes out of left field instead of just TradFi coming on and using the dollar on a blockchain, I think that has potential, but it's very high variance, right? It could either go nowhere or it could be something really, really important that we'll look back in 10 years and say, wow, okay, blockchain's killer use case is actually sort of facilitating an autonomous web with value transfer.
Sounds very interesting. I believe we have a few minutes left. If there are any questions from the audience, and if it's all right with you guys, any questions from the audience for our panelists? We have about 5 minutes left. Dean.
What are use cases that are even early for use of an AI integrated with blockchain transfer?
Well, I think there's many use cases that would apply immediately, right? Like if you think about the bill pay stack, and you're processing a PDF that comes in, these are all highly heterogeneous, right? This is all unstructured image data. You have to then take that image, extract all the important information, and build a workflow on a blockchain. Like that is work that has to be done. So either it's done by a human, and then you manually settle on a blockchain as your database, or you stitch it together into a cohesive workflow. Like if you look at all the major integration platform as a service businesses like ServiceNow, they have all gone all in on intelligent automation, right? This is not a controversial topic in the rest of business process automation. I think all we're really saying is it shouldn't be that hot a take to say blockchain businesses should use AI for what AI is good at, which is stitching together unstructured pieces of information with an on-chain. The world is not just the blockchain. It needs to interact with off-chain systems, right? So that interstitial layer is perfect for an LLM for many types of use cases. And then the more like cutting edge, like very early use cases are, okay, you have two services. You can either onboard to a centralized service, everybody needs a bank account in America, or you can use a stablecoin to transact private information or do a multi-agent operation. Are we there yet? Like, absolutely not. Like Gemini 2.5 is not good enough to do highly sophisticated autonomous work. But if we believe that we're going to get intelligent machines that can do real economic value, then you need a way of conducting business with them. And then the real question is TradFi a better rail? Is COBOL and mainframes better? Or is Solidity, Solana and open public networks a better option? The market will sort of tell.
Yeah, I think, look, there are three things, right? One is, what do you do on your business operations, right? Every company, including ours, is thinking about how, like, we're embedding AI in CX, compliance, KYC. All crypto companies have to think about it. The better you get at it, the fewer people you can get the same output with. So that's a pretty much a given. The second kind of thing is applications, and you mentioned payments, but the other application in crypto is trading. So trading. So there's a ton. I think by next year we'll have some really successful. If Moonshot was the successful trading app from last kind of cycle or last year, we are going to have a few, and we have invested in a few really exciting products coming out in the next couple of quarters. But there will be some Moonshot equivalent from an AI perspective. So that's on the consumer level. And then the third is product innovation, right? So how do you figure out, if you're doing kind of cross-chain swaps and liquidity, how do you manage to optimize for the lowest liquidity across long-chain tokens? And that's a little more complicated way to kind of embed and infuse AI. But that would be kind of the last place to do that, because you have to really justify it from a fees and business model perspective. So CX first, application second, and then kind of core product innovation third.
I think we have time for one more question from the audience, if there's one. Yes.
What is the biggest point of resistance and/or inertia that you're finding in each of where you're implementing your products and solutions, and how are you solving for it?
I think for us, crypto and blockchain is such a it's been 10 years. I think it's still a relatively nascent technology, and I think if we look at the number of developers that are on blockchain and understand it compared to traditional Web 2 technologies, it's probably something like 1 to 100. And so I think the core, and maybe this is true of crypto companies in general, I think our TAM grows as the number of blockchain developers grows. And so I think it's not so much competition between us and like other verticals or other companies. I think it's more about growing the pie and how do we kind of get more businesses to adopt this technology. And really what it starts with, I think, is what are the core value props that crypto does better than traditional kind of rails. And I think for us and where we're finding the most PMF is really on finance, settlement times, control of assets.
Yeah, I think definitely number one is next to nobody knows how to write a smart contract at all. Solidity, the SVM, this is like, when's the last time you wrote C to write a website? Like just the higher level abstractions that developers are used to today just does not exist in blockchain. And I think these things are actively being built by many different infrastructure companies. There's no JavaScript for blockchain. You're writing these sort of low level primitives. Sorry?
We have JavaScript. There is JavaScript.
We have JavaScript, but not for the blockchain. Right. Running blockchain JavaScript. I stand corrected. I think the second thing is certainly compliance and safety. Blockchains have this property of being immutable. So if you make a mistake, it's there forever. And then, of course, with anything that's a regulated industry, the government and the regulation is incredibly important. And so it's market structure. We're all waiting for market structure, the rules, what is decentralized, what is not, what does control mean? Is control, 20 validators, is it 50? These things need to be defined by governments. And then I think once that happens, that's when we can really see a lot of change.
Yeah, good to see you, by the way. I think one question that is being asked in all boardrooms today, if last year was what's your AI strategy, a lot of the normal TradFi businesses are asking what's your stablecoin strategy, and whether you have a good answer figured out or not, or whether how far along you're in that education spectrum. I think where I'm personally spending a lot of time in, and Moonpay is trying to get to that answer for our clients as quickly as possible. So it's one thing to have a stablecoin strategy, but if you're not going to be out in the market by end of 2026, if you're a TradFi company, that's too long. I think a lot of the market is going to be locked up, and TradFi has an interest in this because they are the incumbents, right? As rightfully so, it's their market to lose. So we're spending a lot of time in kind of A, customer education, but B, getting more tactical in how do you go from zero to launch, go live in the least amount of time before you start iterating on the future strategies around stablecoins.
Well, appreciate the audience questions. And Abhay, Griffin, and Andrew, thank you for participating in this panel. Thank you all.